Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading update for Friday, July 3rd, 2020. This is the first Friday reads of a month, so usually what I say here, and I guess I'm saying here anyway, is that I have my June literary newsletter up. I will link it down below. It has snippets from the Goodreads reviews for all the books I read in June. I also have news that caught my fancy, a book pick, a book meme, etc. So you can find all that below, and I usually use this as a springboard to basically not talk anymore about my last month of reading. But I don't actually have that much new news to report today, so I figured I'd at least mention one book, especially because it very quickly ratcheted up to being one of my favorites of the year. I just didn't read it in time for my mid-year book tag. It's The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. I technically finished this in July, but I tacked it on to the end of my June literary newsletter. This is a sprawling nonfiction account of the 6 million African Americans who migrated from southern areas to northern cities, usually, between World War I and the Civil Rights Movement. And Wilkerson does so much research, interviews thousands of people, has all of these stats and things to talk about the types of conditions that Black Americans were facing, and what they said about their lives at the time, and information that was gathered, and historical events that played into it, and all sorts of stuff like that. And among all of this really impressive primary document research and interviews, she also fleshed out the stories of 3 individuals who migrated north in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, respectively, and just completely fleshed out their lives. Such fascinating people. I feel like I know them so well now, and such a long work, but so propulsive and informative, often devastating, perhaps a tiny bit hopeful at times. Incredibly important information for Americans to know about the historical and cultural makeup of our country, and the big movements that shaped it, especially in this time period of Black history, which is so often ignored between, Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement. So I was incredibly impressed. My first official read of July, I started just today. It's on ebook, and here's a picture. It's The Book of V by Anna Solomon. This is a book that caught my attention when I was prepping my anticipated releases of the year list. This is something that might be at home for the Maybe Midrash Readathon that I did a couple of months ago, because it is in part a retelling of a biblical story, namely the story of Esther, who is the heroine of Purim on the Jewish calendar. She was a Jewish girl who was chosen to be queen of the Persian leader, and when one of the king's viziers had an anti-Semitic feeling and almost killed all the Jews, she was able to step in and save them. And thus is the focus of one of our more festive holidays of "they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat." This story is perhaps a little less festive, and it has that feminist bent of arching an eyebrow a bit at what conditions might have been like for women during this time. It's also a bit like The Hours by Michael Cunningham, in that Anna Solomon's fleshes out the lives of 2 modern characters who have callbacks to Esther. Well, one is a kind of a Vashti type figure. Vashti was the king's first wife, who he threw aside for not dancing naked for his men, and the second is more of an Esther figure, a second wife. And in very early days with this book, we're very en media res, trying to get into their lives. So I guess I don't want to have too many summarized thoughts yet, but I will be completing this soon. Whew. And then next on the docket, I'm sure I've pulled this up in several past videos, most recently in my mid-year video, to shame myself because it's PIRKEI IMAHOT, The Wisdom of the Mothers, The Voices of Women by Rabbi Posen and Lois Sussman's Shenker. I wanted to read this for last high holidays, last September. I kept putting it off, mostly for stupid reasons of that this is a workbook where they encourage you to write out your own thoughts along with the readings. So I kept putting it off and off until I finally even took it off of my currently reading Goodreads shelf, because that was a lie. But I shamed myself in my mid-year tag to say that I want to get this book finished before the end of July. So that's why I'm talking about it here. And hopefully I'll have much better news the next time I hold this book up. Huzzah! So that about covers it for me now. Feels kind of short and sweet, especially given my multiple and often lengthy videos of late. This is a weird time in America. I mean, I can hardly believe really that the 4th of July is tomorrow. You know, with every day more or less feeling the same. There's just no spike for that, you know. Most years I'd be at work and be excited for a holiday. I would also be excited perhaps for something my father and I have done a couple of years, where we go to the Capitol 4th dress rehearsal. The Capitol 4th is a PBS patriotic concert that's put on every year, and they do their dress rehearsal the evening before, which I like better because, well, it's slightly less crowded and, you know, no fireworks. I hate fireworks. I'm not a big loud noise person. And also, I work in Capitol Hill, so I'm already in the area the day before, so, well, usually. That being said, maybe this year I'm happy not to be there, because apparently it's almost 100 degrees outside, and oh no! No! And meanwhile, the odds seem very high that there'll be enough clumps of people in America going out tomorrow to celebrate that we'll have a coronavirus spike in a couple weeks again, and there'll be no getting out of this. So much for optimism with my patriotism, but there we have it. In the meantime, I guess I have the time to sit in here and get my reading done. I hope to be back in a few days to start some of my short story videos that I try to do in July. July is my birthday month, and I try to celebrate a bit with some short story stuff because I write short stories. So stay tuned. In the meantime, Happy Independence Day, fellow Americans. Thank you so much to everyone watching, and I'll see you next time.